Hey, discerning listeners, I thought that now that the season is over, I would watch some of the after interviews and read some of the articles. I'm not going to read all of it or watch all of it, but I thought I would just highlight some of the highlights. So this first video is an interview on the YouTube channel Pay or Wait. I think it's with all the cast. Let's watch.
A lot of people are going to have questions about your friends and how hard they are on your prospects. So can you talk a little bit about the meeting, between your friends and Paul? Because they got real tense, girl.
Yeah, no, my friends, they have seen me go through a lot in relationships. I think that to their core, they want me to be happy. Does it come across great when they're really aggressive with people? No, absolutely not. But it all comes from a place of love.
Yeah, I mean, sure, that makes sense. And you can love your friend without being hostile and unfair to other people. She, the friend, I can't remember, Shelby, without even really talking with him at all, had a very short interaction. So, yeah, and she's been saying this a lot, and I would just hope that she would say something like, well, what could she say without throwing her friends under the bus? Because what I would like someone in Micah's position to say would be, my friends, we all have issues. And my friend Shelby can be a little self-assured sometimes. She has her own traumas about men, or I don't know. I don't even know if that's true, obviously, but something that would explain the distortion and the unfair hostility and the strange self-assuredness. But if that were even true, and if Micah even identified that, could she say such a thing? So even, whatever it is, I guess you'd have to talk with Shelby, like, is it okay if I talk about your issues? So, yeah, I guess when I think about it, really the only thing Micah can say is what she's saying.
Accurate. So I take everything with a grain of salt, but it all comes from a place, of love.
Okay, because that wedding scene, they were literally cheering at your heartbreak. And that just shook me to my core. Because I was like, come on.
That's unfortunate. Obviously, I haven't seen the show yet, but I think it was hard for people to understand how real it was for me. I think, from when you only get to see a little bit to them, I think it's still, maybe it seems like a show or a production, but
yeah, that would explain, that absolutely could have been a factor. And you could see that being true, or you could see a reasonable person reasonably believing that. And especially when we consider the hypothesis that Micah did not go on the show, at least in the beginning, in a way that was fully invested in the process. I actually just talked with another cast member on a different show, and what she was saying was that in the beginning she went on the show as a lark, but as time went on, she actually started to get invested. So it's not unusual for someone to go on the show on a lark and thinking, maybe they're talking with their friends, it's like, yeah, I'm not going to meet anyone, but it'd be fun to do. And then they legitimately fall in love, which could have been what happened to Micah. So for the friends, they might have been flippant about it because they didn't think that Micah was that invested in it.
Hey, you scared me with that question. I was like, girl, why you ask this question before this man's supposed to give an answer? But okay, I'm gonna let it slide. I actually know I lied. I got one more question, and I got to grill Tiffany a little bit. You and Kwame, what was going on with this? Because I feel like every time we met up, child, how many times this man gonna ask you, are you happy? He was waiting for you to run off with him. What's going on?
Oh my God, you're hilarious. Yeah, I did kind of get that vibe with him. And, looking back, it's like, I think people misread how I interact with people as flirtation. And I just hope to God that's not what he was holding on to.
Certainly, a lot of people, particularly women, will report that. And I believe that wholeheartedly, that they are just being nice. They're just being a human being. They're being polite. They have eye contact. And it will be mistaken as flirtation to the point where individuals in Micah's shoes might find that they can't give people eye contact. They shouldn't actually respond to questions because they don't want to be accused of leading people on or incurring a lot of annoying people trying to get with them when they're just riding the bus or at work or something. So yeah, I imagine that Micah has experienced that. A lot of women have, a lot of people have. So she's saying that, but the way she was acting on camera with Kwame, and it appears that she hasn't seen at least some of the season at this point of the interview, it did not look ambiguous. The two of them were, even at the birthday party, Chelsea's birthday party, didn't look ambiguous. Although I do remember saying, if you just think about it verbatim, the words that are being used, there's not an overt flirt or an overt indication of, hey, break up with your partner, get with me, or hey, let's get together. I don't know. It was a lot of nonverbal. So, obviously I and others could have misinterpreted that, but I don't know. Because there were a couple things, especially at the pool, that were happening, and I thought, no, this couldn't be happening. And then it happened, and I thought, oh, this is happening. And then it happened and happened and happened. So, but she's, I guess, claiming that Kwame misinterpreted it, which is interesting. So it's either an excuse, or it's true, I can't know, or she actually, so this fits within my hypothesis about Micah, which I don't know. There's no solid data for this, of course, but that I don't know if the best term is chameleonizes herself or doesn't really know herself that well yet. And when people are in front of her, that's who she pays attention to, and she doesn't retain a sense of who she is, and especially a sense of other people in her life that might be impacted by her current behavior. At least that would explain a lot of her behavior. That, according to her, because the way it looked, she was not into Paul. But clearly at the end, she was. And so at the pool, you think, well, maybe it was still growing. But by the time you have Chelsea's birthday party, which I think was just maybe a week before the altar, somewhere around there, presumably Micah was totally into Paul at that point. And we saw a lot of footage of the two of them together. And looking back, it did seem like Micah was definitely into Paul. Those scenes where they're laughing together and playing footsie on the patio. So for her to flirt less with Kwame, but still seemingly very much so, it's possible that, if you just pulled her aside and said, like, what are you doing? Do you want to be with Paul? Do you want to be with Kwame? That she would legitimately say, no, I don't want to be with Kwame. I want to be with Paul. I feel a connection with Kwame, but that's it. But being overwhelmed with there he is, not just because of Kwame, but because whoever she's around, she chameleonizes herself because she feels like she needs to please. She feels like she needs to, one of the things that people were wondering about was that Micah said some things about her parents that indicated maybe some strictness or something. I can't remember the exact language. And then when we met the parents, they seemed delightful. You can't go off of delightful behavior as an indication that strictness didn't happen. So, and I can't remember the exact word, and I could be having this wrong, but there's a possibility that Micah grew up in an environment where she actually had to be a chameleon. She actually had to attend and put herself aside and not really develop a strong sense of who she is and her values. I don't know. I mean, this is a long shot. I don't want anyone to take this as if I'm saying it, but it is an hypothesis that would lend itself to this idea that she would walk away and say, well, I wasn't flirting, because she doesn't feel like she's flirting. She doesn't want to flirt, but because she's so influenced by what's happening in front of her, and of course this would explain the Irina stuff and other kinds of behaviors on the show.
We're less valued as it is. I think that we were just in a situation where we were falling in love. And I think that those feelings carried over.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen that before. And that makes total sense. And I totally understand that. You can't just turn that off. There's no switch. You still have those feelings, particularly Kwame for her, because Micah was his number one, right? So yeah, and I get that. And particularly by the time you get to Chelsea's birthday party, you'd think you would, especially when you're on camera, but regardless, it seems like you would dial it back, even if you have that impulse. Because they seem to be really feeding off of each other. One person would escalate it, the other person would, and they would just, especially at the pool, just got more and more. And if you didn't know any better and you didn't know they were literally engaged, you would assume, oh, these two people are totally in love with each other and there is nobody else.
Were you actually establishing a connection with Zach, or was it more so you just wanted to win the battle of Zach's heart between you and Bliss?
Completely not. I feel like I was in my own race and my own journey, doing my own thing. I didn't care about what anyone else was going through.
Yeah, I think that it would be a stretch. I mean, it's possible that Irina or someone on the show would, because of spite, I suppose, be competitive with someone else because they don't like them. I'm going to get that person just to spite this person. It's possible, but it doesn't seem likely. And I think that that point of view is reflective of people's dislike of Irina, particularly in the first number of episodes.
Coming in there, I told myself, hey, I'm going to only I feel like I was narrowing down every guy. Like if there was a moment where I didn't feel like the person was for me, I would cut it off right then and there. And I did that for multiple guys. And I feel like Zach was the last one that I had the best connection with.
Yeah, she said this at the reunion, and I'll say it again more briefly this time, that it shows that she didn't really take it seriously, the engagement to get married. Now, I think it's fine if people are thinking, well, I'll say yes now because I'm pretty sure, but we'll see when I meet the person. You know, there's more data to be gathered. I have more time to think about it. But the way she phrases it, it's like, well, I couldn't think of anyone else, so I went with him, rather than I fell in love with this person and I wanted to spend the rest of my life with this person. You know, and that might even explain why when she met him, it felt very uncomfortable to her, because he was approaching her like the way most people do on this show, which is, oh my God, I'm in love with you. Let's hug and kiss and spend the rest of our lives and have a lot of eye contact. And she was thinking, look, you're just the lesser of 15 evils. So I don't want to actually, her body, not consciously, right? Meaning that her soul, her comfortability, her selfhood wasn't fully invested in the thing. And so it felt like overwhelming to her. You know, you could imagine that happening.
Loved his story, who he was as a person. Everything about him, like we really bonded on our kind of like growing up, childhood, trauma, parents, things, everything like that. He was one of the best guys that I met on the show. It was nothing to do with Bliss. That was her own.
I think we heard that somewhere else as well, that Irina went through I mean, if who knows about the scale of trauma that Irina is talking about that she went through, but she's saying that her and Zach, they bonded about childhood issues and trauma, to use that word. And we know that Zach went through some tremendous trauma, especially when you read his Instagram post. So if it's even in that ballpark, then that's significant, right? I don't remember, I mean, it's been a while, but I don't remember Irina talking or them including that footage. Of course, they have it on cameras because they record everything, I assume, but we didn't hear that. And that would also explain some things about her issues.
When I saw him, it was going to be hard. We talked about it. We talked about that I'm probably not going to kiss him, that I'm not going to want to have sex before marriage. That was something we made very clear. But I didn't think it was going to be so hard to add on this like emotional, like, you know, in-person connection. That was very difficult. And I feel like it made me more closed off. I don't think I was my best self with Zach. I just felt very guarded. I felt like I needed to protect myself and keep myself more closed.
And I think we know, because we've heard from Irina, that upon meeting Zach, she said, I don't want to go on the show anymore. I don't want to go to Mexico with him. And you could imagine Irina saying that, given everything that she did and said, and also given her way. I think she's not the sort of person that would tolerate a situation like that. And so she felt coerced or encouraged, or who knows what kind of threats or unnamed threats or, I don't know, persuasion that she went through that night upon meeting Zach. And so, yeah, imagine that she's in that position where she meets him and she's like, oh no, not only am I not attracted to him, but I'm repulsed by him. I don't even feel safe around him. I think that's a distortion. Who knows? Maybe Zach is a predator, but there's zero indication of that. So she was feeling not only like I'm not attracted, and not only that I have the ick, but I have a feeling like he's going to harm me. So imagine the panic and she said she had a panic attack. I imagine, I don't know what sort of anxiety she's talking about, but a severe reaction. And then you're somehow persuaded or coerced, I don't know, to continue. Then yeah, it's going to put a wrench in the gears of love and romance.
Sitting up here telling Micah that you had feelings for Paul.
I am a really honest, true person. I grew up Russian. I'm Russian. I was born in Russia, and I'm really honest. Everything, like, I have to say everything how it is. And so when I told the producers, or I said on camera, that I had feelings for Paul, I didn't tell Micah that. And I literally had to go run and tell her that I said that because I feel like I was going behind her back by not telling her.
Very interesting. Yeah, she certainly seems like the sort of person who would be honest. She, in some ways, is one of the most honest people we've ever had on the show. I mean, obviously, I can't think of everyone in my head right now, but of the two of them, Micah and Irina, being hated by the viewership, she was the one who made a video. Micah just wrote this very lackluster post that seemingly didn't really have a lot of meaning to her because during the reunion she didn't really, and it's hard to know, I mean, maybe Micah behind the scenes fully recognizes, I mean, she did use the word selfish, but anyway. And then I suspect that at the reunion they had a conversation with everyone or just knew that Irina was more open to facing the audience and facing the confrontations, because Irina, they had a long conversation with her at the reunion, and she, I'm sure it wasn't pleasant for her. Micah was very guarded, which I think most people would be in that situation. You know, think of like Bartice and other people that the audience wanted the show to go after him. Irina was just up for it. So I think she's, yeah, a very honest sort of person. And at the very least, you could say that that's a plus, right? That she had feelings for Paul, and you can't do anything about that. You can do something about your behavior, meaning don't flirt with him or try to get with him or something. But she noticed those feelings, and she told the production, she told the interview, she ran and told Micah. And, you know, at least it's being truthful. And, you know, that happens. That happens. I think she said that she might have had a connection with him in the pods as well.
Yeah, so there was some stuff that was going on off camera that me and Marshall had. It was like some stuff talking that he should have been talking. And there was, you know, the whole blow up with like, oh, you're a project and all this stuff. And I was kind of just like, yeah, you reap what you sow. So you don't sit here and talk to me and, you know, say that about me. Then I'm going to go ahead and keep it pushing and find somebody who wants to be with me and happy with me and know that Jackie B is okay.
Okay, so we saw a different Marshall. It was a different Marshall off camera from on camera. What we saw.
Well, Marshall, I don't want to say it's like Jekyll or Hyde or nothing like that. Okay. Marshall's a good dude. It's just he was saying some crazy stuff that he should have been saying in the heat of the moment. Let's just say that.
Yeah, it's totally possible. I think one of the prevailing hypotheses about this position that she has is that she didn't want to be with Marshall for whatever reason and wanted to be with Josh. It's okay that you have preferences, particularly when you're in the beginning of that sort of relationship. And instead of just saying, yeah, I don't want to be with him. Yeah, there's some issues, but really it just comes down to I'm just not into him. I don't know what it is. Instead of that, she nitpicked or tried to identify criticisms so that it would justify her leaving or would stave off maybe the audience from being upset at her, which happened anyway. So I don't know. Now, does Marshall have flaws? Yes. We saw some of that at the reunion. I'm guessing that it goes way deeper than that because everyone has flaws. So I'm not saying that Marshall is perfect, of course. Could he have some pretty unfortunate flaws? Yeah, it's possible. So I'm not saying that she is lying or something, but she seems to be emphasizing things in a way that I think comes across like essentially what she's saying is behind the scenes, he was a jerk face, and that's why I left him. It's possible, but it seems more likely she just wasn't into him.
Now, why you wanted to keep the ring, girl? Why we keeping the ring?
You don't need that ring for what? That's my ring.
Okay, girl.
I'm Mariah Carey. Just like Mariah Carey was like, you ain't getting that ring, I'm gonna keep my ring. Go ahead.
Yikes. I guess, what do they say? Possession is 9/10 the law. I don't know. There's a lot of different ideas about it. It's a cultural thing that, especially in this sort of context, that she left him, that she would give it back. Now, he didn't buy it. The show bought it. But the way she says this, it just, she's not doing herself any favors. What's the difference? Just give it back. You're the one leaving him. Big deal. Now, if she said something like, and I keep saying this, if she said something like, look, it was a memento of our love and I wanted to keep it, I think that would stave off the hatred. But the way she says it, I think I don't know, when people go after her, she wants to meet them, you know, and I think that that's a strength of hers probably in some contexts to say, I'm not going to take this crap, and so I'm going to come after you. But I think diplomatically and in terms of social media wise, or I don't know, it doesn't play well to the audience. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important. Definitely, I'm going to key in on specifically Black men representation on TV. You know, it's pretty common that we're painted in a certain light. We're not really given the space to be vulnerable. And in our community, you know, we're kind of judged for some of those things. So I'm just happy to be a part of, you know, a great group of men, not just the Black men, you know, but I'm just keying in on that just because that's my community, and really being there for each other and showing a different side to what, you know, we are.
Yeah, that's great. I obviously talked a lot about the issues of masculinity and the very positive examples that they were exhibiting on the show. And not just on the surface, but in a deep way, in a very real way, in a way that showed people that you can be a well-rounded, likable man, masculine man, and also not deny your humanness.
I love that. I just want to thank all of you guys. I wish.
All right, so that's the end of that interview. Tune in next time when I might read some articles or watch some TikToks or whatever. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.